Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, May 11th, 2021, and we're going to be talking retirement income options. I'm going to work from the Stocks of the Week article because that is what we covered yesterday, and I think that a lot of these are in play. We'll add a couple others to the list, and we'll go through some of the options activity that I think might be worthwhile. Stock market is correcting today. It looks like it's down pushing 2%. Yep, right around 2%. And a lot of the momentum ideas out there, a lot of the meme stocks are getting beat up, particularly those companies that were not profitable. And as I said yesterday, profitable is the new thing. So we need to look for profitability and for a lot of upside based on the reopening of the economy and a one-off inflation bump. Again, I say one-off because I don't think this is perpetual. I don't think it's hyperinflationary. I think this is just a one step up in the price levels. I was at a fish market yesterday talking to the guys there, and they said, look, this is a one-time thing, but as supply comes back on, we expect prices to level off. I see that throughout the economy. These prices, while they will not settle back too much, aren't going to go up much more either. And that applies to lumber, that applies to food, that applies to a lot of things. So what can we do to position ourselves well? Well, as with anything in investments, you want to look for where the inflation is. Now, we know that deflation is the big overriding economic boogeyman. So where will the inflation be? Well, as the stimulus shifts from monetary to fiscal, meme stocks and non-profitable companies are going to start losing investors. We're seeing that happen already. These are the corrections that I told you would come this year, way back in January. We hit the shiny round number of 4,000 on the S&P 500, which I said right in my forecast for the year, and now we're coming back down. Will the S&P 500 get under 4,000? I think almost certainly. Will it get to 3,600? I think almost certainly. Will it get down to 3,000? I don't know. Maybe not. Will it get down to 2,500, which is probably where fair value is, as we've gone through a number of times? Maybe not. Will it overshoot down to around 2,000 again? Probably not, but you never know. So, where is the inflation in the economy? Where is the inflation in stock prices? Where is the inflation in commodities going to be next? One place that I've told you to look over and over again is the gold stocks. Why? Because they also mine silver and copper, because they are lean and mean. They've done a great job over the past decade getting to a point where everything they do is basically profitable and de-risked. They work in a deflationary environment as a hedge against fear. They work in an inflationary environment in general. They seem to be non-correlated to almost everything. We've looked at that correlation chart a number of times. And what if a bunch of the money that's been flowing into cryptocurrencies leaves cryptocurrencies and goes into gold? It would only take a little bit of regulation to make that happen. And if there's a crypto dollar, which we know there will be, that's the hammer that jams it, Bitcoin and Dogecoin and all the other ones. So yesterday we took a look at these stocks. So let's start with Ford, because that is the one that I think is going to be the anti-Tesla. This is a longer term chart. There's a heck of a trend. Let's look at the daily. Even the daily is pretty good. This is your RSI. Probably about as close to oversold as you're going to get this one again. See where it stopped falling in here and here. And this was just the coronavirus crash. Look where it stopped here and here. It's almost done correcting. How do we know? Well, look at this divergence. This is the money flow index. That's volume weighted. That means there's positive volume coming in. Look at the side of the chart here. I have these colored down a little bit. Look how volume's picking up right around this line. Now that doesn't mean that in a bad market it can't jump down here to under 10 a little bit. It could, in which case I would probably buy calls. I would look for a spot to buy calls, especially if I got a sideways pattern again. So if it comes down to here and goes sideways, I would say somewhere later in the year, we'd be looking at buying calls. As it stands, this is probably a pretty good one. Sell cash secured puts on. So if we take a look at the June 18th, which is the monthly, depending on how much of this you own already and how much of it you want, go right across the board here. The $11 puts to June, getting 41 cents, right? So that's a little under 4% for 5 weeks. If you really, really want it, think of it as if you're buying it today. You could buy it for $11.48, or you sell this $12 put, get your 92 cents or 95 cents right in there. You have a net cost of, say, $11.10 versus the $11.49 that you buy it for right now. So again, this depends on how much of it you want, whether you would sell the 11 a little out of the money or the 12 a little in the money. Let's go through some of these stocks. Start with Zoom, because I already have the healthcare stocks bunched up together. Told you that around 200, I'd be super interested in this at the bottom of our buy zone, but Zoom is at the top of the buy zone. However, it has ARK-related risk. What do I mean by that? Cathie Wood's fund is selling off hugely. Remember when I said that I didn't like a couple of her biotech stocks and a couple of other stocks? People were like, well, what do you know? It's Cathie Wood. Yeah, well, I've been around 25 years now too. And there were certain stocks there that were clearly highly speculative. And now they're getting crushed. Jim Cramer was on CNBC this morning, said the same thing. Regardless of whether you like Cramer or not, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. The reality is that her fund is selling off. Remember, she hit $50 billion of assets under management in January. Now she's down to $20 billion. As people dump the fund, as they become non-believers, they didn't really know what they were believing in before anyway. They were just chasing performance, which we talked about all the way up here from September really into January. This stock started to correct before that. But Zoom has become the de facto standard, and they're profitable. So at what price do they make sense to buy? Well, if you're super adventurous, I think you can start buying it now or selling cash secured puts now if you have a big enough out. As I've said, I like them in the lower 200s. So we'll have an article out on Zoom soon because I think it's getting time to talk about them. Paycom is the company that we talked about last October, right? Right in here we talked about it. Got away from us. Now it's coming back. Again, weekly chart, kind of middle of the range, not quite oversold. Daily chart, right? It's just hopping off of oversold. Right? It's oversold on the RSI. Started to catch a bid. Just started. It is in our buy zone though. So if you like the Paycom software business, and I do, you might want to take an itty bitty starter position. And again, it's an expensive stock. It's hard to sell cash secured puts on, but you could. So let's get into some of these healthcare stocks. Let's take a look at Exact Sciences. Again, a company I know well. I think it'll go to 200. And if there's any positive M&A activity, you go higher. I like it in the 70s, 70-ish. We can chart this out as such. So this level would be, about 90 is where you might see some support. Then this level, 73, which it hit right there. It's super interesting that it hit right at the line. Let's take a look at what an extension looked like. So a super long-term extension. Wow. Look how far back that goes. See, I match those lines up. And on the super long-term chart, your target for exact way up here, right? That 1.618 line is a pretty typical target. So is the 2. Well, I use the 618s because they happen over and over again. Then let's take a look at this. Let's draw another extension from here. Again, match up your lines. Match them up. And then let's make a hypothetical. Let's imagine that it gets down to 786. This is hypothetical. Let's make it pink. Look at that. Look at that 1618 line. They're almost right on top of each other. This is a pretty legit target. Somewhere over 200. I can see this stock getting to this range pretty easy. But if we can get it under 80, it looks like a triple. Again, why? They really do have good testing volumes. And I told you, I did my Cologuard yesterday. And I wish their packaging was a little different. I mean, I still don't think it's quite as easy as it could be, but it's pretty easy. How many of you have done a Cologuard? Anybody? No? Yep. How did you find it for ease of use? You think they could have made the directions maybe a fold out instead of jamming it in that book? It was easy. I won't say it was hard. Yeah, I think. So my take on the Cologuard was this. One, there was a lot of materials. And I thought they should have put in all the healthcare stuff and all the disclaimers into a booklet. But then I think they could have taken the directions on how to use it and those little stickers that you have to use for labels, and put that on like a 6-sided 3-piece kind of rigid paper, almost cardboard fold out. And that way you'd only have 2 things. Once you have 3 things to hold on to, it's difficult. So I didn't think it was quite as easy as it could be. I'm going to tell Kevin Conley that. He'll take it, for what it's worth, but I think he probably knows that I'm on his side. Him being running a Wisconsin company that I'd like to see do well. All I'm doing here is make this chart a little easier to read. Good grief. All right. So when we take a look at this on the daily chart, you start to say, pretty oversold. But MFI is still heading down. Again, remember, MFI is volume weighted. That means that the volume is in this direction. It's kind of like an early indicator of what RSI is going to do next. That's pretty darn low, right? It's starting to hook up a bit. But there's no confirmation with MFI. So I'd expect this to go down a little further. Will it pause at 90-ish? Certainly could. 618 line, right, just right about on top of it. Somewhere in the 90s. I mean, it's at 100 now, right? What's at 99 now? So, and as I say, it's up a little bit today, and it's even up a little bit today. So, Exact Sciences is interesting. I would want it in the 70s. That's where I'd feel comfortable with it, especially with ARC owning it. I think get more sell-off. So I think we might get a gift here. Get it in the 70s. So I'm not really ready to look at the options on this one yet. Hello, Doc. Weirdly, Kramer said the same thing that I said a week or 2 ago, is that Teladoc is running into competition. Ultimately, I think scale matters. But the most important thing that I'm finding with Teladoc and similar services is that other than in the case of mental health care where people are throwing up their hands and the government and everybody else is trying to figure out how to deal with it, just regular telehealth care, you're fighting a cultural war against the doctors' offices, and nursing staffs. So converting them to telemedicine is going to take a few more years. I mean, it jumped, definitely a shock to the system, and it's coming, but there's still resistance. So the hospital and healthcare systems are going to have to be the ones to push this because of the efficiencies. So this is the future. How many competitors they pick up is hard to know. And will the healthcare systems build their own staff rather than contracting out? I've got a feeling that you're going to see a lot of healthcare systems, the health insurance linked provider networks, put together their own systems. So we'll see. But if we could get Teladoc around 100, at a bottom fishing price, that wrings out a lot of the uncertainty that's in here, gives you that margin of safety. And again, as an ARC holding, it could get to that bottom fishing price. So with the ARC holdings, that's really what I'm looking for, is a gift of an almost full round trip. And then we can evaluate it down here if this is where we want it. I could even call this ARC fair target. But again, not ready to look at the options yet. Let's look at some of the ones that I am willing to look at the options. Let's start with clean energy. This puppy just keeps coming down to 76 in the buy zone. I think I'd like to get it below 70. This is a good plateau here. Let's take a look at PBW. I think we might be ready. Take a look at June 75. I think you can probably try to sell this, put a limit order on it of 8, maybe. That way you get a net price of 67. I have some limit orders in at 67. And one of the articles I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you a list of stocks to buy on this correction with limit prices. So I think that right here, you could set up a good till cancel of 8 on this June 75. And if this drops down into the lower 70s, this should pop up to 8. Be selling it a little bit in the money, getting a net price of 67. Now you can wait, try to get it even cheaper. But again, it depends on if you have any or not. What is your clean energy holdings situation right now? This is part of the whole scaling in process. You can't be perfect. But if you sell that $75 put at 8, net price of 67, so on this orange line, and then for your second scale in, if it happens to go below here, then you work with trying to get a position down here, or at least a net cost down here, or, in the future, you might sell like a $55 put, get some premium, it comes back up, you don't get it, it just expires. And you consider that to be premium that helped defray the cost of the purchase up here. SunPower, just talked about it yesterday. I said it looked like it was starting to level off, and it's jitterbugged around a lot today. At one moment it was up. In fact, it looks like it's up right now. Yeah. Okay. Oh no. Yeah, there you go. Plus 24 cents. So it was down over $1 for a while. People started to pile into it. So let's take a look at it on 4-hour chart. Yeah, it's trying to hold this line. I don't know if it will or it won't, but it has pretty strong support down here. So depending on how much of this you own, again, I think you take a look at the Junes. If you already have a position and you just want to try to lower your cost basis or buy really cheap, go ahead and sell maybe a 20. I got a $1.20 for these the other day. I think $1.20. I can actually check for you. Looking over at Interactive Brokers right now. So my June 20s hit for $1.21. So you can actually do a little bit better than me. So if you're just looking to defray costs, sell out of the money. If you're trying to accumulate, sell just inside the money or just outside the money. So all those look pretty good. Sunrun, Enphase, Solar Edge all seem to be just a little bit further away than we needed, but those are coming too. SunPower looks like it's trying to pivot. And finally, On Track. Again, love that chart. It's hanging in there today too. Such a bad day in the market. This one's not getting beat up. That's very, very, very good behavior. So if you haven't sold your On Track puts yet, I think you should right now. Again, depending on whether or not you have a starter position. You already have a starter position up here, 35, something like that, 32, 33. I think you sell just a little bit out of the money, right? Barely at 30, or sell the 25. And here's the thing. I think in that case, probably go out to August, past the next earnings, which I think are set up to a T to have a positive surprise. But even if it's not, you end up getting more shares at a net price of like 22.65. So this is one where I think you can go out a little further if you want to have a lower strike price. All right. Again, there's no puts on us or cover calls we talked about the last couple of weeks. If you didn't write them, it's probably too late now. I mean, there might be a few out there for you, but I didn't see any. Nothing that jumped out at me. Are there any stocks that you want to talk about? Anything that you have and you're like, oh, maybe I could sell a covered call, or anything that you're eyeballing that you want to try to buy? So actually, Unity, I keep looking at this one. It's been jitterbugging around 80. So it's broken below the optimal buy zone. The area that I expected it to get into, it did. Now it's below. Break this down to 1 day, right? Fell off, came back. Take a look at the 4-hour. So I will say this. MFI is not quite there yet. Take a look at the 4-hour. MFI, RSI turned up. So I don't know. It seems to be, if you look right here, look at all that buying right there. If it follows through with another long bar, it starts connecting the dots, and that probably means that we're near the bottom here. But when you go back to the weekly charts, you clearly see that this could get into the upper 60s pretty easy. So you have to decide what type of risk you want to take. I like this business. I really do like this business. So right now you can sell the 80s for June at over $5. Honestly, that's pretty sexy. Or you can sell the 75s for over $3. Now you're really close to a $70 net price. So I think if you're trying to get into Unity, but you don't want to take a position, I think go ahead and sell one of these puts right now, depending on how low you want your strike price to be. It's only 5 weeks out. But when you take a look at this, you go 330 divided by 75, 4.4%. It's basically a 5-week hold, so there'd be 10 of those periods in the year. I mean, that's a 44% annualized rate of return. That's reasonable. I don't think a lot of people understand Unity right now. I just don't think they understand it. I think that AR, VR, all that stuff is blended together for people. I just don't think they understand the platform here. Platform companies are wonderful, right? Because everybody uses them. So I really like this. NVTA. I believe this is the one I took off of the very short list. Is it not? This is one of the ARC stocks that I said that I didn't like their patent position. Correct? Is that who this is? Teresa says that her daughter uses Unity. She's a software engineer. She designs robotics programs and games in her spare time. Yeah. I tell you what, Vince, I think that NVIDIA is pretty risky stock here and warrants some redrawing. We redraw this. It's all the way down to the 1618 line. Breaking through it, actually. Honestly, man, I could see this one getting back down to around 10. Now maybe 20-ish, I guess, right there. That's an interesting spot. Okay. Support. Breaks through it on the crash. Gets back up to it in its resistance. So that is the 786 line, excuse me. I think you're being very risky here. I think this is one of the stocks that Kramer and I agree on that it's not all it's cracked up to be. I can see it getting down to 18, 19, 20 is real easy. And Honestly, I just don't think that this is out of the question. So I don't know how they're going to make money. And that's the problem. How are they going to make money? I don't know. Again, that's why I took them off the list. Had a hard time making myself into a believer. And I've been skeptical of Kathy Wood now. Not skeptical, but I think that there's things about that epic run that were just a bit lucky, caught the moment, and not everything there was brilliant. I think you have to be careful. And this is one of the companies I don't think I would own. So Palantir, I've been reading up a lot about them, deciding whether or not to add them to the VSL. I will tell you, this is one of the stocks that I have a hard time putting on the VSL, but I should because I bought some. Just bought some. I have bought them just ahead of earnings. So I was hoping they'd hold this line, and they didn't. So now I will tell you this. I looked at their earnings, and I think that their CEO is another ripoff artist. It's just another guy getting way overpaid for what he's done, and that takes money out of the shareholders' pockets. So this clearly can go to here. But here's what I just did today. So this was actually the one I was going to finish with anyway. Look at these to make sure I tell you the right one. The June $18 put I sold, like right before the webinar, and I got exactly $1. So the June 18s I sold, I got $1, and I feel like this is a price level that should hold. But I can't tell you that I'm 100% convinced on Palantir. All I can tell you is that it looks like the company is going to legit grow 30, 40, 50% a year for years, unless there's something about the company which isn't terribly transparent, turns out to be negative. So I want you to understand the risk you're taking with Palantir. Does it have to the moon potential? Yeah, it does. It could just start dropping huge numbers. But the technology is a little out of my reach. I get what they're trying to do. I can't really explain how they do it. I don't know that anybody can. I'm using an AI now that I think is pretty awesome. And apparently Palantir is way better. So, well, the potential moat for Palantir is just that they've invented a better mousetrap. And the proof isn't that they show it to you. The proof is that companies are buying it. So you have to have a one-off belief here is that the company's buying this, and the government's buying this, are looking at this and going, wow, this kicks ass. And that's why you buy it. Because you're not going to understand it. And I'm not going to understand it. This is above our pay grade. The thing that scares me is I think the CEO is a greedy prick. I think a lot of the CEOs are greedy pricks. I think Elon Musk is a greedy prick. Right. So they diluted, they issued a lot of shares for executive and other compensation. So as a shareholder, you look at the business revenue going up and you go, well, there's some pressure on the CEO to back off a little bit. So hopefully that takes, because you don't want the CEO just voting himself more and more money, right? Because it's his board. They'll vote the way he wants. All these boardrooms are boys clubs. Then they invite some girls in and, so they can feel like, hey, I'm as good as the boys. And then they start acting like the boys. I mean, the level of reform in the corporate boardroom isn't anywhere near what it should be or what people think it is. You've got solid 60 to 80% of the boardrooms that are just pieces of crap. So you're right. You're right. There are a lot of analytics platforms out there. But if this one's growing at 30, 40, 50% per year in revenues, you don't need to be the one that decides that it's the best one. Those companies are doing it for you. Don't be that arrogant. Let them say, hey, we love this and it works for us. Revenues, right? Sales speak volumes. So I just want you to understand the tech here. It's not 100% understandable. I think the CEO is a greedy guy, and somebody could invent something better 6 months from now. So we'll see. I think this one rallies again. bounces off somewhere in here and rallies again. And it's going to be constant evaluation on this one, right? But years ago, people said a lot of things about Apple and Microsoft. And Peter Thiel's in on this one. He's a Midas touch guy. Just is. He knows what's going on. So I think if you want to sell a put on what would become a starter position for you, or a second position, my position is very small, 1% starter position. I sold some puts for another 1%. It's because it has literally just gigantic upside. If they execute, if nobody catches them, if the CEO doesn't skim, right? Just understand the risk. I mean, this could round trip all the way back down to 10. I don't think it will, but you can't say that it won't. You can't say that it can't. You can say that it won't, but you can't say that it can't. I don't follow Snow. I just started following AI. Yeah, look at that. I don't remember which fund this is in that we have. It's a couple funds that it's in. Yeah. I'm just telling you, man. Somebody's telling me that those are competitors to Palantir, and I don't know that they really are. I think you're over your pay grade here. I've watched the presentations from Palantir, some of the private ones I've gotten. It is neat. I don't know if it'll be the best forever or it'll just keep churning out revenue. But it seems like the things that they did for government, they're applying to big business. And I think there's just a ton of gigantic contracts out there for them. Will they win them or not? I don't know. Right. So here's Intel. Right. It's approaching our optimal buy zone around 50. So this is an interesting one. We talked about this last week, didn't we? Get a buck for the 50s. I don't think that it's on a daily chart, I guess. Oversold. Oversold. I think you're within days on this one. Could be today. Down 2%. Yeah. I could see selling the 50, but I'd want a higher price. I don't remember what I said last week, but I'm sure I said 3 or 4. I said sell the 55 at 5. So now I'd probably say sell the, well, I guess you sell the 50 at almost anything then. Yeah, definitely can be selling puts on this. And again, it depends on if you have a starter position already. As I told you, I prefer EVW to iClean, but you can certainly own both of them. Yeah, it's just getting there. Just getting there. It's getting close. Getting close. Remember, it's important to look at this. So again, I think a lot of these are within days, because you're going to get a statement from the Fed. You're going to get this evidence and that evidence. The narratives will change. The market will go back up. Could it fall out of bed? Again, it could. But this is pretty folly out of beddy. I mean, it's 34 to 22. It's 30%. Now, again, I think it just took off the froth. That's all I think it did so far is take off the froth. Could it get down to here? Faux show, 17-ish. Could definitely get down to there. So a lot of these 7, 8, 6 lines are in play, to be honest with you. So I almost wonder if we should be doing this right there, right? Should we have wider, lower ranges? Again, a lot of these momentum signals are telling you almost there, but maybe not quite there, right? Volume is heading down again. So patience, scale in, move slowly. I think that's the action. But you want to have something going on. Go to your very best ideas, which are the ones that I laid out yesterday, and start with those. All right, let's call it a day, and I'll get something tapped up here in the next couple hours. I would like to see how the market closes. So I'll probably put this out later this afternoon around 4 or 5. Take care.